Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn, Hinderaker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderaker. Welcome to WowBiz Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. Welcome back to WowBiz Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderaker. This is going to be one of the wildest, craziest, most insightful business TV shows you've ever seen. We've got a lot of content, a lot of insight, a lot of new kind of a twist, shall we say, on what we normally do right here in this particular program. The most exciting new thing that I want to share with you today as we kind of start things off is personal branding. Now, personal branding has been around a long time. Insurance people talk about it a little bit. Financial services people talk about it. But more and more, as the world becomes, I want to say, commoditized, everybody seems the same, their offering is the same, the value is the same. It becomes more and more important to differentiate not just your product, right? Not just your service, but you, what you stand for, what you believe in, and kind of how you come across, even in social, kind of superficial situations. Now, the person that I have to refer to first, I can't get this man out of my head, is Mr. Deion Sanders. Now, everybody knows Deion Sanders, a tremendous athlete for many years. He's in his 50s now, and he's taken over the responsibility for coaching the Colorado Buffaloes. They had a rough time this last week, but before that, he demonstrated with his entire team an incredible transformation. The entire state was so excited about that particular football team. They'd been 1-11, I believe it was, in 2022. And there's something about Deion, the way he packages himself and the way he packages every single player on his team. It's not just a superficial gloss over fashion concept, by the way. It's kind of supported by a very simplistic but actually a very authentic philosophy. And let me see if I can't recount it and get close here. When you look good, you feel good. When you feel good, you perform good. When you perform good, you get paid good. That's how he continues to use the word good when he should be using well, but nevertheless, everybody gets it. It's up on the wall. And he kind of makes a simple but meaningful correlation between your outward persona, shall we say, and what you're wearing and looking like and how you come across, and your actual performance and what kind of value you create. That's Mr. Deion Sanders. So I want to tell you, I have to stick this in here. Coming from Omaha, Nebraska these days, you know, there are several men's clothing stores, apparel stores. Not a lot, but there are a few around the city. They've been mostly here for a very long time. And, you know, obviously the world has changed, retail has changed with the web and so on and so forth. A lot of new competitors in the men's clothing arena coming up from the bottom, you know, really low price clothing, but not always bad quality, by the way. So it's a very interesting, they're really in a difficult situation. I don't know if sales have gone down dramatically, but I would guess somewhere along those lines. Now, if they were in front of me, and by the way, I know at least 2 or 3 of them, and they actually said, kind of put down their defenses and said, Lynn, what do you think? What should we be doing, and how can we increase sales of clothes in our clothing store? Because it's just empty. It's just, there's nothing happening. There's nobody walking in the store. The salespeople are standing there for about hours like this, you know. And I would say here, it's actually pretty easy, but you have to be willing to do something different. The concept is personal branding, as I said before. In other words, don't think of yourself only as dressing a guy or suggesting that he purchase this suit or that suit, whatever. The concept is, let us help you. We will be your personal brand advisors, shall we say, whether it's the car that you drive, whether it's the materials that you have around you, the environment, your office, and of course, once again, your clothing and how you come across. Now, let me just be real specific here. I'm going to give you an example, right? So right now, today, I'm standing here in this little jacket here, and a blue shirt. And I would probably say, and I do run around town with different clothes on, I can kind of read what people are, how they're seeing me or responding to me. And this would project kind of an Ivy League, somewhat traditional, fairly contemporary, but really comes out of a traditional history. And so it just looks kind of preppy. And of course, if you live in Omaha, Nebraska, a preppy person would be, maybe well-to-do, fairly smart, but somewhat conservative, maybe a Republican perhaps. And that would just be the kind of the general persona when you see somebody dressed like I am dressed right now. Now, I'm going to go to the Deion Sanders world, all right? I'm going to move in that direction. Now, again, obviously, I leave my shirt on here as well, and we'll move into a different kind of look. And I promise you, I wish I could explain this in greater detail, but people will respond to me in a far, far different way when I simply put on a black jacket instead of that tweedy Ivy League jacket. And even if I go so far as to put on this hat, which is one of my favorite elements in my wardrobe, by the way. And so now all of a sudden, if I walk into a grocery store and I'm not wearing that sport coat that I just wore, but this one, I'll get a completely different vibe and response from people. There'll be some conservative people that will shy away from me, but there will be probably a third or so of the people that I come across just in the aisles, walking along, nothing special going on, who will really, I'll call it, vibe with this look. They will appreciate the extra style, a little bit of flamboyance, not a lot, and of course the more dramatic projection here with a dark jacket and the same shirt. So they will assume that a person in this industry that looks like this does something different, probably an entrepreneur, right? Because you probably wouldn't wear this into a typical corporate environment like KPMG or something like that downtown, but you certainly would with the jacket that I showed you earlier. So all of this, first impressions, I know this sounds like such a cliche, first impressions are everything, but first impressions are fascinating. And a lot of the people, I have to say, the young folks that I'm talking to these days, they don't think about this stuff. It doesn't really occur to them, and they're not really consciously trying to manage their first impression. They feel a little awkward even thinking about it or doing that. And I got to suggest to them that you rethink that. So it's very interesting. Personal brand, stand for something. All of these looks that I just shared with you right now imply certain standards, certain variables, certain values. This would definitely be a more progressive, democratic, left-leaning kind of a person. And of course, the person I mentioned before, more conservative and conventional. It's a fascinating thing, especially if you're in sales, by the way. You have to think about these things and figure out should I make a deep impact with a small segment of the population, or should I make kind of an okay standard impact with 85% of the population? That's how it is when you're on the streets talking with customers. Again, thank you for joining us here in WowBiz Nebraska. My name is Lynn Hinderaker, and I've got so much to share with you. You know, one of the trends that is shaping business today is a greater sensitivity, and of course it's because the workforce is so turbulent, and they're coming and they're going, and they don't like the job, and they do, and he's a jerk, and it's a very interesting time, very interesting time. And so a lot of managers and business owners are being forced, whether they like it or not, to think more, how do I say, to be more sensitive, let's put it that way, to the employees, the individuals, actually try to get to know what there is about them individually and try to engage with them in a more personal or interpersonal level. Now, there's a gentleman that I started my career with that really embodies this. I'm going to share this briefly with you. But before I do that, I'm going to tell you the word that describes all of this, it's a new word called humaneering. Kind of like engineering, I guess, but it's called humaneering, which means that you focus not on getting the job done so much, but really focus, and not on the process, but focus on the individuals and really understand what trips their trigger, what makes them go and turns them off, and so on. Humaneering. Now, the key to humaneering, by the way, is to find some qualities in your employees that you really admire, authentically, sincerely, and to mention them now and then and as it comes into play, but the ability to identify what there is about Harry or Susie or whatever, and what makes them tick and what makes them excel for you in the workplace, very, very important. Now, there's a gentleman, this is a story that goes back a long time ago. There was a gentleman at the Firehouse Dinner Theater. I used to work for that organization many years ago in the 70s, believe it or not, when I was in my 20s. And he was the general manager of Firehouse Dinner Theater. His name was Mike Clark. Mike Clark. Now, many of people that are a little bit older will remember Mike Clark. He was a collegial individual, likable, very bright, very quick. He ran the entire Firehouse Dinner Theater, all the food and the drinks and the waiters and waitresses and all that kind of stuff. He was into that. But he also was an artist, and he would talk with the owner of the facility about the talent and who should we feature and what should we say about the play and get people to come, all that. But he was also a well-known journalist. He'd go on TV and do movie reviews, and they were very good, rock and roll or different band reviews and so on. So he was a very broad and intelligent man. But the thing that I really liked about him personally is he found some qualities in me that I didn't really talk about or think about much. And he really pointed those qualities out at me and said, because you're like you are, you can do this, but other people can't do that. But you can do that because you just have that ability, whatever it was, right? Whatever it was we were talking about. And he would find qualities in me and then be very happy and chat about them. And it was flattering, of course, but it really gave me a sense of loyalty to Mr. Mike Clark. And I'll forever remember him. And he was a pioneer in humaneering, So remember the humaneering trend, and think a little bit about more attention paid on the individuals, and try to find ways to leverage their personalities and their personal strengths. It's an exciting idea. We're on the edge of a very, very big paradigm shift when it comes to employee development. All right. So my name is Lynn Hinderaker, and thank you so much. The sponsors for this particular show today, WowBiz Nebraska, a very interesting organization, and they have one product and one service, in contrast to many things that come onto our news desk and so on, where they have multiple features and multiple strengths. And this has to do with the convention business, the trade show industry. And as you know, there's an opportunity there. It's coming up now, and more and more people coming out of COVID, they want to circulate, they want to mix, they want to chat with people, whether they're in booths, at the convention hall or whatever, or out in the hall, shall we say, or the aisle. But several years ago, and I'm talking a ways back now, a special type of exhibit was designed. And it was designed by a marketing firm here in this area. And it was called, in the end, it was called the inverted V. Just think about that for a second. It's the opposite of a V. And I'll explain to you how it went down, right? As you take a look around in any hall, you'll see about 70% of all the exhibits have concave backdrops, just kind of a gentle curve, and usually some graphics on that. And then maybe towards the front, they'll have a card table and a couple of chairs, and that will essentially be their exhibit. And we're talking now about a 10 by 10 exhibit. This could be longer than that, could be 10 by 20, but nevertheless, the majority of small businesses buy a 10 by 10 exhibit. They might get one of those concave backdrops, and they're going to show up and sit at a little table and see if they can't engage people as they walk by. That's the standard. I would say 60 to 70% of all exhibitors do this. Well, so here's the interesting idea strategically that led to quite a revolution. If you think about that backdrop, the concave backdrop that I mentioned, so common, everybody buys them, they're attractive and so on. And you go to the very middle of the whole thing and assume it's a drapery or some kind of a real relaxed fabric of some sort now, just mentally. And you grab the middle of that, the very middle of that concave backdrop, and it's a fabric, and you bring it this way. You start to pull it from the top and the bottom, and you pull it towards you, and you keep coming, and you can stop right at the very 50% depth of the exhibit. Now all of a sudden, when you step back and look what you've got two super panels. Each of them can hold, theoretically, a graphic, right? So you can have a special message or graphic targeting your existing customers. And the other side of this super graphic, it's probably about 4 by 8, by the way, would be a new message for non-customers. That's a very interesting thing. Now, there's actually feng shui woven up in this entire thing, because as you come out to the very corners, right up by the aisle, the display features a podium over here on the far left-hand side, right up by the aisle now, and another one right over here on this side, tucked into the corner there, and the podium's about 4 or 5 feet tall, so people can stand on it, and stand by it rather, and lean on it, and chat with people as they go by. But when you go by, and you're a customer or a prospect, whatever, you're just hanging out at the convention, what's interesting about this is that you're now not 10 feet away from the organization, you're not 10 feet away from the display, you're only 5 feet away from the display. Of course, there's got a big vertical ridge right there. So there you have it. Essentially, fundamentally, you've got a big giant V, and then you've got a podium over here and a podium over there. Far, far easier to get people involved with you. They're closer to you, you're closer to them. The messaging is far more interesting. This is the inverted V. The secret was actually the most innovative exhibit design, and that's according to Nomadic Manufacturing, by the way. They've been around the industry many, many years. Globally, it was named the single most interesting and unusual, unique, breakthrough exhibit design, the inverted V, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. The inverted V, think about the inverted V as you line up your plans for of course, going and displaying or exhibiting at a trade show. Right here in Nebraska. Thank you so much. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've covered a lot of ground. WowBiz Nebraska is excited to share a lot of new ideas with you, new vendors, new concepts, new programs, new trends. We've talked about humaneering. We've talked about personal branding. I want to chat right now with you about a new restaurant in Bellevue, Nebraska. I'm going to reach right over here to the perimeter of our news desk. I want to talk to you about this. It's so fascinating, but I'm going to tell you a story first. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story first. When I used to live in California, Southern California, there was a chain of convenience stores, and one of them kind of by Venice Beach in that general area, kind of close to the ocean. And they would have quite a few people standing in there in the mornings, you know, getting their coffee or whatever they're buying, gas, whatever. But inside this particular convenience store, and they kind of gave the employees a little bit of leeway on this, they would play music inside the store. And it was usually kind of upbeat music and kind of fun to listen to as you were picking up your items and getting ready to check out. What was interesting, though, is this is what happened. There was a line of people, you know, I don't know what it was, 4, 5, 6 people that were waiting in line. And one of the people in the middle of the line was listening to the music and was a very expressive kind of person. I don't know where this came from, but this guy began dancing to the music, right? And he was about 5, 6 feet away from the front counter, and he had people in front of him, behind him, but he was having a great time, and he was enjoying himself, and he was boogieing around and enjoying the music. It was his favorite song, whatever it was, you know. And people were having a good time. Everybody had a big grin on their faces. They were enjoying. A couple of ladies were clapping with him, you know, as they were standing there to check out and pay for their gas. Well, this went on, you know, and somebody grabbed a couple of pictures of it and so on. And all of a sudden it became interesting. Now, sorry, this is the big story. When he got to the counter, and he was going to pay for his gas and so on, the service person, it happened to be a lady, she gave him a discount. She gave him a discount because he was creating some positive vibes, I guess, there in the convenience store, and people were upbeat, and nobody seemed to be hassled about it. He didn't go out. It wasn't an outrageous expression, by the way. He was just having a good time and so on. Well, this reached the local news in Los Angeles, this particular phenomenon. Somebody took a couple pictures at the time, I believe, and pretty soon the entire chain in Los Angeles County, you walk into their convenience store and they're playing this music, right? And pretty soon we had not just one, but we had multiple people dancing in line. This is a fact now. Dancing in line, having a good time. There was another person that was up there at the counter, by the way, kind of making sure that nothing got out of hand and noticing and kind of watching over this situation. But I got to tell you, the people, the people came. The people came, man. They wanted to see this. Not only that, they kind of wanted to have a little fun with it and do it themselves. And so this spread throughout the entire chain in Los Angeles County. Now, I've never forgotten that. I thought to myself, shopping and buying whatever it is should be an experience, not just a transaction. This is a very important point. People talk about brand experience. This is a brand experience that was kind of catalyzed by this one individual. And we kind of let it go, let it go in that way and see how it took some form. Well, anyway, I was really impressed with it. And when I came back to Omaha, Nebraska years ago, it was always in the back of my head that somehow, some way, there's got to be that way that music can kind of fit its way into the flow of creating value in a company. And what I came across in Bellevue, Nebraska, on mission, by the way, on mission, it would be East Mission, is a restaurant, kind of new, by the way. I believe it's like a family restaurant. It's called Shugs, S-H-U-G-S, Shugs. And this is what I would call, they call it comfort food, Shugs comfort food. So before we go any further, just know that you've got to get in your car and go to Bellevue, Nebraska and see what Shugs comfort food is all about, because it is out of this world. And if you read all the reviews online and so on, they underscore that idea. But I'm thinking about it, and I got a little bit carried away. So I'm going to pull this up here. I think that comfort food is fine. Everybody knows what comfort food is. But if you eat the food, I think there needs to be something a little more, exclamatory, a little more enthusiastic. So I call it down-home dynamite, all right? Now, I don't have permission from Shugs to do this. I'm just theoretically talking to you right now about what I would do if I had control and the ability to influence what they're doing down there. But what's really interesting, because down-home dynamite really does explain the food that they have there, the chicken, and oh my goodness, all kinds of incredible foods. But what I really like is the name Shug. I love that. And if I were thinking about starting a dance, I would think about a dance called Shugs. In fact, if I wanted to attract people to this particular restaurant, which my guess is they would like to have more people there, all restaurateurs do, I would have somebody out, maybe several people out on the sidewalk in front of this restaurant doing the Shug, right? Doing the Shug. All the way across, doing the Shug, man. Doing the Shug. And I guarantee you, if that's promoted, if that's talked about, go over to Shugs, watch them dance. Maybe you get a discount if you dance your way into the restaurant at Shugs. I don't know. But I'm telling you, it's a great word. It's a great name. Down Home Dynamite is a great theme concept for this restaurant. And it should go someplace, ladies and gentlemen. And you got to check it out yourself. And then you go, oh, that guy sounds crazy to me, but I think he was on the money. I think he was on the money. So there you go about that. Shugs down in Bellevue, Nebraska. Now listen, let's talk about trends. Talked about the past there and how we were inspired by something from the past. Now we're going to talk about the future. Yes, we are. Now, several years ago, I had the privilege of doing some work with a family in Lincoln that was into the transportation business. In particular, by the way, the limousine business. They served a lot of people with weddings and so on, and beautiful limousines, stretch limousines, and so on. And that was their family business. And they did very well with it. I tracked them down. It occurred to me that the van business and the transportation with vans would be a big thing, and that already is, of course. You see them all over town. But the name van and the name go, what are these transportation? What do? They go, right? So all of a sudden it's occurring to me, I'm going, oh man, come on, really? Van Gogh? Shouldn't there be a company called Van Gogh? Shouldn't there be a brand called Van Gogh? Of course there should be. So I called this particular family and we chatted for a while, and they finally were very, very open to expanding their operation and maybe buying a couple vans to get it started and doing some an incredible paint job. I'm going to show you this incredible paint job right now, which is very much like, it will remind you of Vincent van Gogh. So I'm going to hold this brochure up right now, and we'll show it to you very clearly here on camera so everybody can see it. But there it is, an incredible paint job right here on this incredible van. And the Van Gogh name makes perfect sense. People got it. Wow, how much fun is that? And we tried to make it a kind of a luxurious ride to the airport and so on. Well, here's what happened, and I'll shorten this up. A lot of people don't really realize how long it takes for brand advertising to kick in, all right? Or promotional advertising for that matter. And this family was not used to purchasing ads and going down that road. They just didn't want to do it. They had never done it before. So that was the end of that, unfortunately. But those Van Gogh vans are still sitting there, and I'm thinking about them, right? I am really thinking about them, wondering what can we do with them. There's got to be a way to use them, reuse them, and so on. So just a few days ago, before this show is taped, I came across a story, kind of a lengthy story, about rural transportation and how many families are unable to get around in small towns like Wahoo or those kinds of communities, and they just don't know how to move down to the grocery store and so on. It's too difficult, and the big buses don't really work. So what we see there is an opportunity, could be a company that is here in town or somebody out of town, to take this Van Gogh concept and reinterpret it in the context of, I'll call it micro transportation, picking up one or two people, taking them over here, some other people, taking them over there. This will really add agility, kind of a nimble approach towards transportation, and really adding great value to the existing citizens there in these communities, these small communities. So I hope that we can find somebody that will invest in the Van Gogh concept, and we'll finally see them in rural communities across the state. All right. Well, this has been a fairly interesting show here. A lot of new information, a lot of strategy, a lot of development. I'm going to put my hand in here as we wrap this up. I probably have 300 business cards here. I'm going to pretend that there's one person behind every card, and they're saying, Lynn, what would you say, what would you do if you could have the opportunity to do something about my company? All right, so here we go. We're going to wrap it up right here. Boot Barn, just outside of Omaha on the interstate, here it is right here, should do a cross promotion with Sapp Brothers. Sapp Brothers has a restaurant. Boot Barn sells great boots. They go together. They're a half mile or a mile away from each other. What a cross promotion looming right here with Boot Barn and Sapp Brothers. There you go. Inside of 1 minute, a cross promotion has been developed that has synergy woven right into it. Thank you so much for watching us here on WowBiz Nebraska. I'm Lynn Hinderaker. We'll see you next time. Lots of good insider stuff. Stick with us. We'll see you again. Bye-bye.